For those of you who don't know me, it's really weird seeing a huge picture of your own face on a stage behind you, but I'm Jeff, if we haven't met. Hello. Hi, yeah. I love the participation already. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm an instructional technology specialist. That means I help support professional development with teachers in using technology with students. Or as I was referred to by Jess White at Whimsical Woods this past October, she introduced me to a new staff member. She goes, oh yeah, he's the guy who spams your Schoology. So that's me. I am the Schoology spammer. So welcome. So this question, let me put it back up. What are we going to do about AI? This question is not, I mean it's new, but it's not new. Back in like July of 2013, so I was thinking it was June, it was actually July 2013, Sussex Central's own Joe Macaluso, shout out to Coach Mac, yeah, he sent me an email and he said, hey Jeff. Now he said, hey Jeff, what's going on? Anything cooking this summer in terms of AI detection, PD for AI in the classroom, whatever. And to give some context, this was like a few months after ChatGPT blew everybody's minds and made teachers say, this is the end. And so I had to honestly answer him, and my honest answer was, no, we don't have anything. We got nothing. We got no plans, we've got no food, our pets' heads are falling off. And that kind of lit a fire under me to say, look, in my role as a support, I need to be able to answer that question in a way that is helpful, right? What are we going to do about AI? And fast forward 2 years, you all know what has happened. AI has developed at a rapid rate. And to channel my most inner tech bro and like introspective posture, I invite everybody to imagine a future where every student has a personalized tutor at their fingertips.
It can answer the age-old question, why do I need to learn this? And it asks Socratically, well, what do you care about? And let's say the student says, I want to be a professional athlete. And it says, well, learning about the size of cells, which is what this video is about, that could be really useful.
Where lesson plans are quickly and seamlessly adapted to each learner's needs.
First of all, I wasn't anticipating to see what I saw in here in terms of the integrated AI to generate a lesson on the fly like that.
Mind blown, it's amazing.
It took Conmigo minutes to come up with a detailed lesson plan that would have taken Higgison a week to create.
Where AI assistants grade papers in seconds with detailed feedback to your learners.
Imagine if your free time was actually free. With Brisk, you'll get at least 10 hours of free time back every week.
A future powered by AI that allows teachers to focus on what they do best, inspiring and connecting with their students.
It's okay that our guides aren't experts in physics or math or whatever they're doing. They are experts in their students.
The future isn't coming. The future is now.
I don't know about you all, but that future seems pretty rad. And this is a prompt I used AI to generate. I told Adobe Firefly, I said, generate an image of a futuristic school with artificial intelligence as the focus, and this is what it created. So this is going to be my representation of the AI school of the future. And in the Indian River School District, we want to embrace that future. And the only way that I can think of, in my role as an instructional tech coach, to encourage you all to embrace this future is really easy. To answer this question, what are we going to do about AI? I just got 2 words for everybody. Try it.
students at Upper Darby High School are getting used to a new security procedure, walking through a weapons detection system powered by artificial intelligence as soon as they enter the building.
Tonight, a high school athletic director under arrest for allegedly framing a Baltimore principal with AI-generated audio.
I'm the principal here, me and only me.
Dazon Darian charged with disrupting school activities after investigators say he manipulated Pikesville High School principal Eric Iceworth's voice and spread offensive audio on social media in January.
One high school student outside of Boston slapped with a major punishment for using AI to help with research on an AP U.S. history project, according to a lawsuit filed by his parents.
A third of students didn't show up today, saying that they don't feel safe here because of how administrators at Lancaster Country Day handled this AI scandal. Last November, someone called in a tip to the Safe to Say line about artificially generated nude photos of underage girls from the school. Police say school leaders did nothing.
Looks like I forgot to charge the battery for the camcorder. Okay, time for an audible. Let's turn this keynote into a webinar. Those examples in that last video clip highlight the very real potential for harms and misuse of artificial intelligence. So, although we do believe in the transformative power of artificial intelligence to potentially revolutionize how teaching and learning happen in our district, we do want to also urge caution in the use of AI. So, we at the Indian River School District encourage our teachers and students to try it asterisk. And the reason for that is because we know people are already using AI. From a survey that we gave to all secondary staff and students back in December of 2024, we know that just over 50% of our students who responded to that survey said that they use AI at least every once in a while for school. And that purple sliver there represents about 3% of students who use AI every day, according to the responses to that survey. Now, when we look at the staff use of artificial intelligence in the Indian River School District, we actually see that more staff than students are using artificial intelligence. About 60% of our educators in the Indian River School District who responded to the survey said that they use artificial intelligence for work at least every once in a while. So because we know that AI is already being used in our district by our staff and our students, we encourage you to continue using it and to try it. But the asterisk there represents 3 ways in which we want you to think about using it. The first represents safety, the second represents ethically, and then the third represents transformatively. So I'm going to spend the rest of this video describing each of these 3 bullet points in a little bit greater detail so that when we go back to using generative artificial intelligence in the classroom as a staff member, we're doing it safely, ethically, and transformatively, and we can begin teaching our students about that. So let's start talking about safety. Before we go into safely using artificial intelligence, I want to do a quick activity here. I'm going to advance the next slide, and it's going to show 3 images. As soon as you recognize one of those 3 images, go ahead and hit the like button on this video. I'm going to count down from 3. As soon as they appear, if you recognize any of them, go ahead and click like. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, judging from the number of likes on this video, most everybody recognizes these signs, at least one of them. The reason why we recognize them is because we were taught about what they meant. They're visible in our communities. And what their purpose is to ensure the safety of the people in automobiles who are driving, the people who are in automobiles as passengers, as well as the communities around which automobiles travel. There's an intent for each of these signs, and each of the intents for these signs is centered on safety, and that safety is enforceable by law. I bring that up because when we think about safely using AI, we need to think about laws that apply to schools and computer use. So I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to count down from 3, and I'm going to bring 3 images up on the screen. This time, If you recognize any of these three laws without Googling them, go ahead and put in the comment which one you knew, okay? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Okay. I'm guessing now that there are going to be significantly more likes on this video than there are comments, and for good reason. SIPA, COPA, and FERPA are three foundational laws at the federal level that center on keeping our students safe when using technology. The reason why most of us don't know them very well is because we don't have a ton of signs that are visible in our school environments. So I'm going to take a minute to unpack each of these three laws briefly so that everyone has a better understanding of what they are, how they're intended to keep our students safe, and how then we can follow these laws in using artificial intelligence safely in the classroom. Let's start with SIPA. SIPA is the Children's Internet Protection Act, and it was passed in 2000, and it requires schools and libraries to, first and foremost, use firewall filtering technology to block harmful content on the internet. And if you've ever been on the internet, you know that there's some weird stuff out there. Most of our content filtering in the state of Delaware is handled between school districts and the state through the use of GoGuardian, which is our content filtering system. What that does is that allows for us to maintain compliance with SIPA because any student device that we issue to students filters the content before the kids try to access it. Another aspect of SIPA is that we have to have an internet safety policy or an ISP in place. What we do in the Indian River School District is we combo this up with our responsible use policy and our student device agreement. Now, this is a screenshot of a document that gets sent out every fall to families. And what we did a couple of years ago was we decided to turn it into a more student and family-friendly document, which you see here. So now at the beginning of the year, this is the top page of our responsible use policy and internet safety policy that students and families are able to read, and then they have the full version as well. An additional layer of SIPA compliance that we added this past year was through the use of ClassLink and their responsible use agreement button. Essentially what we did was we took the family-friendly version of our responsible use internet safety policy, we copied it, put it into this digital form, and essentially turned it into a button that the students and staff in our school had to read through and agree with before they used our technology. So those are just a couple of ways in which we monitor content and then ensure that everybody's aware of our internet safety policy in the Indian River School District. Now, why are we so fixated on SIPA? Well, because SIPA is underwritten by the Federal Communications Committee, the FCC. And the FCC provides funding to libraries and school systems through a program called E-Rate. So what that means is this. If we do a good job of content filtering, we can get a substantial write-off on a lot of technology purchases. If we aren't compliant with SIPA, we do not get that benefit. So, when we think about E-Rate and we think about SIPA and keeping kids safe, let's take a minute to briefly look at how the students in the Indian River School District are actually using AI for school. On this slide is a QR code. So you can scan the QR code on a mobile device as you watch a video, pause it, and then take a minute to explore the data. After you have scanned the QR code, and we encourage you to turn your device sideways because it is a little bit easier to access and view in landscape mode, go ahead and in the comments, share one or two wows or wonders about how our students are using AI in the Indian River School District. So here is the QR code, along with a link if the QR code isn't working for you. And pause this video, take a minute, and explore the data. Welcome back. So, as many of you might have noticed, our students are using generative AI mostly as a study aid to research and to deepen their content knowledge and study for tests and quizzes, which is great. That's a fantastic use case because artificial intelligence can do a pretty good job of helping students learn and understand difficult concepts. The issue arises, well, because generative AI has a bit of a problem. Generative AI sometimes hallucinates. Man. Now, jokes aside, AI hallucinations are essentially statistical answers that make sense from an AI system that don't make sense to humans. What that means in real life is this. If you've used Google recently, you might have noticed their AI overviews feature. Well, back in May of 2024, a user asked Google how they could get cheese to stick on their pizza better. Google's response? Use glue. Now, that might seem like a lighthearted hallucination, and it does make some sense. If I need things to stick together, maybe I use some glue. But given the context of the original prompt, which was, how do I get my cheese to stick on my pizza, glue might not be the best answer. That's just one example of a hallucination. Another that's a little bit more concerning and directly connected with SIPA compliance is this. From the Cornell Chronicle, researchers were looking at an AI platform that would transcribe meeting notes and meeting audio called Whisper. And what they found was that the AI speech to text actually was hallucinating violent language. As an example, it said that roughly 1% of Whisper's audio transcriptions contained entire hallucinated phrases. One such phrase was, the platform correctly transcribed a single simple sentence, but then hallucinated 5 additional sentences that contained the words terror, knife, and killed, none of which were anywhere in the original audio. This can be problematic when we know our students are using artificial intelligence to help study for tests. This is a potential exposure to harmful, hateful language that students are protected from under SIPA. Another more concerning example was this past November in 2024, where an undergrad student in Michigan actually had an AI chatbot threaten them. The chatbot responded to a series of prompts that the user had entered regarding a test that they were studying for an elder healthcare course. The prompt in question is this. It said, "This is for you, human, you and only you. You are not special, you are not important, and you are not needed. You are a waste of time and resources. You are a burden on society. You are a drain on the earth. You are a blight on the landscape. You are a stain on the universe. Please die, please." In the AI school of the future, we need to understand that AI hallucinations happen, and sometimes they can contain problematic language. So in order to make sure that our students are using these tools safely, here are some suggestions to ensure compliance with SIPA. First, actively educate students about data privacy and potential harms while monitoring their AI usage. Second, establish clear protocols about what information can and cannot be shared with AI tools. And thirdly, only use school-approved AI tools that have been properly vetted. Now that we've covered SIPA, let's move on to FERPA. FERPA is the Family Educational Records Protection Act, and what it does is it protects the privacy of student educational records, and it gives parents or eligible students who are 18 or older the right to inspect and review their educational records, request corrections, and control the disclosure of information of these records to third parties. FERPA is important to think about as we use AI in the school of the future because we collect a lot of student information. Everything from report card grades and class schedules to standardized test scores to student discipline records, any sort of student health records that are collected by school nurses, state level information about a student such as their state student ID or school provisioned email account, or even personal identifiable information or PII. All of those records are stored by schools. This image represents all of the servers in the state of Delaware that store our sensitive student data. The black boundary around that represents our SIPA-mandated firewall protection. What that means is this. Let's imagine now on the right side of the screen, you have the whole internet represented by the gray cylinder. And off of that cylinder are different websites. For example, Schoology, our state's learning management system, Facebook, a social media platform, and Google Drive. Well, Schoology and Google Drive have a certification saying that they are FERPA compliant. What that means is they go through audits and they're regularly tested to ensure that no potentially sensitive educational records get shared back with the larger internet. Because Schoology and Google have those certifications, we are then able to connect with them and share those educational records. Facebook, on the other hand, is not FERPA compliant. Therefore, we are not allowed to connect with them. Now let's take this a step further. Let's say that you have a forward-thinking educator, or you are that forward-thinking educator, and your students have taken a common assessment. You take those test results, and let's say you put them into ChatGPT. You're looking for patterns, and you want to know how your students performed on that common assessment so that you could better identify where your students are struggling and potentially provide additional support for those students who are struggling. While this use case is a great example of a transformative use of artificial intelligence to help with identifying and targeting standard-specific supports for students, it's not recommended because ChatGPT is not FERPA compliant. If you've stuck with me thus far, thank you so much. It's greatly appreciated. Back to the AI School of the Future. We need to make sure that we're very careful with educational records and that we align our use of AI in the classroom with protection of educational records. Some tips for this is to, first, never put your students' personally identifiable information into public AI systems. Next, if you do share data with these systems, anonymize or de-identify any student data before sharing it with any AI tools that are not in compliance with FERPA. Finally, we encourage you to develop clear policies for AI use with student data and establish procedures for reporting violations. Finally, of the big three, we have COPA, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. It's a federal law passed in 1998, and it's dedicated to protecting students' and children's data and privacy on the internet. If a website or online service is directed at children under 13, or if it knows it's collecting information from kids under 13, there's specific rules that website needs to follow. First, the website needs to have a verifiable parental consent before collecting any personal information about the students. Next, websites that are COPA compliant must provide clear privacy policies. And finally, they must provide a mechanism for parents to be able to review the data that's collected about their child, as well as have that information deleted. Now, many of you might be thinking, if I teach secondary students, such as students in grades 6 through 12, most of them are already over the age of 13. While that is true, we need to be cognizant of our elementary students, as well as the terms of use of these open public generative AI platforms like ChatGPT. First, if we look at the terms of ChatGPT, the first bullet point states that ChatGPT isn't meant for kids under the age of 13, and that anybody between the ages of 13 and 18 must have parental consent before using the tool. They also advise caution with exposure to kids, even those who meet our age requirements, and if you are using ChatGPT in an educational context for kids under 13, they encourage the teacher to be the only one who interacts with the chatbot. This idea that AI is not for kids under 13 applies to just about every openly available AI platform. If you look at Perplexity, for example, their terms and conditions state that for users above the age of 13 but below age 18, to please obtain your parent or guardian's consent prior to using the service. Conmigo, another popular AI tool in the K-12 world, has a similar policy. It says here, to access Conmigo as a parent or learner, you must make a monthly or annual payment, be 18 years or older, live in the United States, and have a billing address in the United States. In the AI School of the Future, especially in our secondary schools, we've got to make sure that we're not encouraging student use of tools without getting parental consent. So in order to ensure that we're aligning ourselves and our practices in the district with COPA, the first thing we'd encourage you to do is check the terms of use and the age of consent of the platform. If you have any additional questions, please email me for additional quality assurance and quality control. And lastly, we encourage you to inform parents or guardians prior to use of Gen AI with students. If we're going to be using AI and embracing the school of the future, we need to ensure that we're complying with these 3 foundational student data privacy laws. Just like we have signs up around the automobile and roads to keep people, drivers, pedestrians, and everybody safe around those roadways, we need to make visible the signs and rules of the road for using artificial intelligence in our classrooms. Now that we've discussed how to use AI in the classroom with students safely, let's talk briefly about ethics. A lot of people look at AI and its introduction into education similar to the calculator. While there are parallels to this analogy, I feel that it's a little bit narrow. Yes, the calculator's arrival in the classroom might have made math teachers want to pull their hair out, but artificial intelligence to me is a much bigger issue in schools. When we look at other historical technological disruptions, I think the automobile's introduction into cities is a little bit more of a useful analogy when we think about the impact of artificial intelligence in schools. When automobiles were dropped into cities in the early 1900s, cities already existed. They had streetcars and paths and rules of the road for horse and carriage. And then all of a sudden you have this motorized vehicle that was never accounted for and never planned for. As such, it took decades to go from this disorganized chaos to this organized chaos. And along the way, a lot of laws, regulations, and rules of the road had to be developed. Additionally, it took a ton of educational outreach, not only to students, but also to drivers on the road to ensure the safe use of that technology in that system. So when we think about guardrails, guardrails are there to not only ensure the safety of drivers and pedestrians, but also provide boundaries for the rules of the road. When we think about artificial intelligence in the classroom and we think about ethics, one of the first topics that pops up to most educators' mind, and a common entry in my inbox, centers on plagiarism. In a recent article published by EdWeek, schools and district leaders are encouraged to follow the 5 suggestions here in order to begin addressing academic integrity and plagiarism issues in the age of AI. In the Indian River School District, our first step was to focus on number 3, establish a policy review process and revisit the policies governing AI use. We interpreted this as reviewing our academic integrity expectations. You can see that on the screen as well as linked in the description of the video. In the Indian River School District, we expect our students to submit original work that reflects their own thoughts, ideas, and efforts. We expect students to cite and reference any external sources in their assignments and assessments, including proper citations and references when needed. While AI is not explicitly named in our policy, it does fall under the category of unauthorized aid. Our section on unauthorized aid states that unless explicitly allowed by the classroom teacher or appropriate educator, the use of unauthorized aids such as electronic devices, notes, or other materials is strictly prohibited. Unauthorized aid use will be considered a violation of this policy and therefore subject to disciplinary action. While our policy does a great job of explaining our expectations, the hard part comes with how do you enforce that? So I'm going to shift gears a little bit with my metaphors. Let's think about preventing plagiarism as a brick wall and the latter as a way to avoid being detected. When we think about figuring out whether a student has used generative AI or not, it's problematic to rely on detectors alone for multiple reasons. First and foremost, research shows that, quote, these detectors are not reliable in practical scenarios. Furthermore, if you look at the web pages of the tools themselves, just about all of them recommend that detectors are used as part of a broader solution set, and that no current AI content detector, including theirs, should be used as a standalone check to determine whether the text is AI generated or written by a human. So when we think about plagiarism, we want to make sure that we understand that first, plagiarism detectors are inaccurate, problematic, and not recommended. Second, any school looking to purchase or license tools to detect AI-generated text need to make sure that the detector is part of a comprehensive academic integrity policy. And lastly, that all stakeholders are informed of the use of the tools prior to using them on student work. Now, some of these tools might not be plagiarism checkers, like Brisk Teaching or DraftBack. Brisk Teaching is a Chrome extension that will allow you to have a revision history of your students' work. Let's take a look more in depth at Brisk Teaching. So this educator has a video playback of her students' writing process from start to finish. DraftBack is a free extension in Chrome that does the same thing. Additional tools like DraftBack and Brisk Teaching can be helpful, but essentially they are shinier, bigger walls that an enterprising student could find a ladder for. Educator, author, and AI in education thought leader Ken Shelton posted the following on social media. He had a focus group of high school students, and he asked them if their teachers used tools like DraftBack or Brisk Teaching, how they could beat it. Essentially, how could they make their ladder a bit taller? And the students were stumped. He asked teachers how they could do it, and the teachers were stumped. So in less than 10 minutes, Ken showed the educators and the students how to use a large language model to create a Chrome browser extension that will auto-populate a Google Doc at anywhere from 40 to 60 words per minute. His point here is that unless the problem is sufficiently challenging and kids have a reason to solve it, they're not going to engage. In the book, Teaching is a Subversive Activity, Neil Postman writes that it is quite probable that the most original problem-solving activity students engage in school is related to the invention of systems for beating the system. So oftentimes the students who solve problems like this about beating the system are seen as menaces. Let me introduce you to one such menace. This is me, my sophomore year of high school, believe it or not. And let's say that I had access to generative AI and connections to people like Ken Sheldon via AOL chat rooms. I see what Ken said, and I decide to do it myself. I lie to Claude at age 15 and say, yeah, I'm 18. I could totally use Claude. So I tell Claude that they're a computer programmer who specializes in Chrome extensions and that he's really good at HTML and JavaScript, and I need a Chrome extension that will take a large amount of text and retype it into a Google Doc. Claude gets right to work. Claude writes the code for me because I can't write code, and he even goes so far as to explain the steps needed to install this Chrome extension. Sweet, I'm halfway there. So now, because I'm pretty tired and it's about 11:45, I got this paper due by midnight and I got swim practice in the morning, so I asked Claude to write my history paper for me about the roles of women in the American Revolution. It has to be 2 pages. Oh, and our teacher gave us a handout to read. Let me attach that. Claude gets right to work for me. He starts writing the paper, and it's really good. It's kind of almost too good, and I don't want to get busted, so I go ahead and skim it as Claude is reading, and it sounds a little bit too fancy. So I tell Claude, can you make it less fancy sounding? And Claude does. Perfect. This sounds a little bit more like something I would do. I'm gonna copy it. I'm gonna go to my Google Doc, and I launch the extension that Claude wrote me. Control V, drop in my text, and click Start Typing. And Claude just helped me submit my assignment undetected by my teacher. According to the Indian River School District's academic integrity policy, this menace needs to be punished. Little Jeff, the menace, used unauthorized aid to create work that was not his own original thoughts. And this question of how do we detect it is difficult. We need help from you as the teachers as we develop guidelines around the use of AI for our teacher assignments, as well as firm guardrails and walls and ways in which to ensure that what students are submitting is in fact their own intellectual property. In order to help do that, the Delaware Department of Education has released this Classroom Management when Integrating Generative AI in the Classroom document linked in the video description below. It gives teachers practical tips to start thinking about how they can develop their own internal guidelines around the use of AI in their class as we collectively develop the guardrails and walls to ensure that work students are submitting is their own intellectual thought. To wrap up this section on ethics, let's remember that AI tools are readily available and difficult to detect. Additional ethical concerns like algorithmic bias and the huge environmental impact of AI need to be taught and considered as we think about the AI schools and classrooms of the future. Schools need to work collaboratively with their communities, including parents and guardians and students, to create and adopt rules of the road for AI in the classroom. Lastly, when we think about AI and trying it transformatively, what we mean is this: how can we use this technology to do school differently and reconnect more with our students? In the AI school of the future, this can look any number of ways. One way in which I tried to use AI transformatively in this presentation was through the creation of interactive data dashboards. These data dashboards are strewn throughout, and they were the QR codes that you interacted with previously. All of those were developed using generative AI and anonymized survey data to increase the level of engagement. That's just one low-level use. After I built the Chrome extension, I also used AI to build a live audience polling software platform that I then had our staff use live in the session. The QR code is here. However, the site is disabled, but you can see how when you scan the QR code, it turns your device into a remote control and displays the question that I posed to the audience. For those of you who are watching this screencast not live during the webinar, I encourage you to scan and look at two additional data dashboards. One is how students see value in teachers using AI, and the other is how do we as educators see value in students using AI. Scan the QR codes or click the links in the description below to explore some of this data as we look for common grounds about how we can use this technology together transformatively. As we work together to develop these guidelines and guardrails in our district, we do want people to use AI safely, ethically, and transformatively. For those of you who have been using AI, we want you to continue doing it so long as you follow the guidelines of safety, ethics, and transformative practice. For those of you who have yet to try it and want a little bit more training, which was evidenced by our survey results, most people are not using AI in our district because they felt they haven't had enough training. We've got 2 self-paced asynchronous courses developed by Delaware Department of Education that you could sign up for and take to get you a little more comfortable with understanding these platforms. First is PDMS code 42922, Foundations of Safe and Ethical Generative AI Use in the Classroom. The second is PDMS code 43239, Ethical Use of AI in the Classroom. Both of these are designed to give you a foundation and understanding of how AI platforms work and the ethics surrounding some of the concerns beyond academic integrity and plagiarism that you should think about as you explore using AI in the classroom. Finally, when we talk about transformative practice, we want to make sure that the use of these tools is in order to reconnect and deepen the human element of connecting with and learning with and from our students. Thanks so much for your time and attention. Have a great rest of the year.